I'm trying to figure out how my wife and I can agree on whether or not to homeschool our son. He's 2 right now, and the reason we're talking about this is because it will determine whether he goes to preschool or not.
Why is that?
Because we figure if he's going to be homeschooled, then we'll just keep him at home. Right now, I work from home and take care of him throughout the day, so he's already at home. We don't do daycare or anything like that. So if he was going to public school, we'd put him in preschool next year.
Okay. We can talk about the merits and all that of homeschooling versus public school and private school. We can talk about all that, and I love that conversation. Yep. It's one of my favorite things. But for you and all new parents, like the way you and I grew up, which is you go to one school and then you just go to the feeder middle school and you go to the feeder high school, that world is over now.
Yeah.
And so I want you to feel free to make a decision a year at a time.
Okay.
Sometimes even a semester at a time. It's just kind of a mess out there. It's the Wild West right now. And so all I have to say is, when you put pressure on yourself with a 2-year-old, or let me put it this way, you and I both went to a schooling system that was, if you're not in this class by 3rd grade, you're not going to get into the other class by 5th grade. If you're not in that class, you're not going to get into honors math. If you're not in honors math, you're not going to get into honors whatever in high school. And then you're just doomed to live under a bridge, right? That's the world we grew up in. That world doesn't exist. It's the Wild West. So you do what's best for you and your family this year. And then you do what's best next year. And obviously stability and friendship and community and all that will play into account, right? And you want some consistency. You don't want moving every year kind of thing, but just take that pressure off yourselves. You do not have to have this thing figured out when your kid's 3 years old, dude.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what we've talked about, is even just starting in terms of the route of public school, meaning he goes to preschool, he goes to elementary school, and we just see where it goes from there. But I don't like the idea of pulling him out once he's in, because he'll have friends by then and that whole other aspect.
Yeah, but he'll also have people who don't like him, which, how dare they, right? But it's a mixed bag, right? It just is. And by the way, you and I don't know about you specifically, I grew up in a world where almost nobody ever moved.
Right.
I remember I graduated, my high school class had just under or right around 1,000 people in the graduating class-ish. It was huge. And when I sat down at graduation, I won't say her name, I'll say her first name. There was a girl named Laura that she's a woman now. She sat by me on one. I'd never seen the person on my right. I had no idea who that was. And I had not seen the woman on my left. Her name was Laura. I hadn't seen her since we sat by each other in kindergarten, like in like the little Redbird row or the Bluebird row, wherever he sat us. And so nobody moved where I grew up. That's just not the case anymore. Everybody moves every 2 years, 5 years, 3 years. And so this idea that you have this static group and this like gang that goes from grade to grade, it's just not the way it is much anymore.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So free yourselves from, we have to have this figured out at the age of 3 all the way through 18. Like, bro, think about this. 15 years is pretty much 3 presidential elections from now.
Right.
Dude, who even knows? Who even knows, right? Who knows, man? So just free yourself from that.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about public school versus homeschooling. What kind of discussions are y'all having?
So essentially, we're not worried about the education that he's going to get from public school. It's just more of, my wife's coming from it on the side of it's easier, it's cheaper, and everyone does it in terms of public school. Whereas I'm coming from more of the side of we can get the socialization and pretty much all the pros of public school we could do in a different way by homeschooling. And I don't know, I just see, when you have a vision of 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, the public school doesn't align with what vision we have for our family, I guess is the best way to put it. And she has the same vision, but she also thinks that public school is just easier. So let's do that.
Sure. I think there's merit to both of those. So tell me about your picture. Like when you think of your kid, are you going to have more than one?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. We're planning on having another one.
Who knows? Soon. Yeah. Everybody's got plans, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And the reason I ask is you're asking first parent questions, which I love. I just assumed that this was your first one, but you're asking very first parent questions. Kind of like, should we disinfect the pacifier when our kid dropped it? We're Googling if pacifiers are going to mess up their jawline. And then by your third kid, you're like, whatever, dude. Like, right? Yeah. Who cares? But tell me about your picture. You imagine your kid is 10. Let's pretend you have an 8-year-old, 2, and a 6-year-old. What is your picture in your head of a random Tuesday morning?
I would say, getting up, having breakfast together as a family. Hopefully by then my wife won't be working, so she will be at home with us so that I can just work from home and have from 8 a.m. till 1 p.m. of actual homeschool learning and doing things more in a structure. And then from 1 to dinner time, going out and doing real world, whether it's hiking or going to an aquarium or somewhere else, just going out into the world with them and letting them experience things firsthand.
Okay.
I would say is what we're thinking about.
So I guess what I would tell you is my wife and my daughter had breakfast together this morning. Me and my son had breakfast together this morning. And my daughter was under the weather a little bit. And yesterday, me and one kid went and did one thing for a while, and then we all had dinner together. And then me and my daughter had WWE for a while. And so I guess what I'm telling you is the very beginning of that and the ending of that is capable. You can do that no matter what schooling situation you're a part of.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and I think this might be actually even more clear, to help you understand is you know how you can run to something or from something?
There you go.
I see the lives of people that I know that have kids that are older, and it's like, all I know is I don't want that life.
Okay. Yeah.
And I don't know how much the schooling plays into that, but it's like the schedules that they have, the running around that they do. I'm like, oh God, that's us 5, 6, 7 years from now, if that makes sense.
It does, and I'm glad that you're thinking this through right now. What I don't want you to do, as Brene Brown says, I don't want you to dress rehearse tragedy. Okay?
Yeah.
So, yes, there is going to be more pressure, theoretically, in a private or public school that you drop your kids off, that all kids are going to violin, and from violin they're going to soccer practice, and then every weekend is filled with horse riding and dancing and what there will be pressure to have that life. There will also be pressure to, in 5th grade, I think my kid was the only one, maybe one other one, who didn't have a smartphone in 5th grade, which is insane to me, but it was what it was, right? So those kind of things are real. I think homeschooling comes with another set of pressures. And so I think trying to not have pressure is better solved by saying, what are our values? And creating a world where those are present, meaning we will eat dinner as a family 4 or 5 nights a week, period. End of story. And that means that we'll get every kid can do one thing, one instrument and one sport, and that's it. That's all we're doing. Y'all get to pick. Or I want every one of my kids to try jiu-jitsu. One kid likes it, the other kids don't. Or I want all my kids to try soccer just because kids need to run around, and one will love it and one will hate it. It's setting down those values first, and that's a cool thing to begin to work through right now, because that's something y'all can practice now without being anxious or worrying about something that is going to come 10 years down the road. Because here's the other thing. 10 years ago, this is crazy to think, 10 years ago, I was 1, 2, 3 jobs from where I am right now.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I was on call 24/7, 365. 5 years ago, I was on call every second of every day, leading a team of, 500 people. And then now I'm a the freaking YouTuber, right? So who knows what your life looks like in 10 years? I'd much rather you anchor to values. Like, this is just kind of who we are. We just don't do tons of busy stuff. We spend extra time with our kids. We, every time you go hiking, even though it would be more efficient, you'd get a better workout, yada, yada, yada. I bring my kids with me when I go hiking. That's just going to be who I am. Or when for me, hunting for 4 or 5 years, I knew I'm not going to be as successful because I'm bringing my kid with me. And now I've got an amazing, fun hunting partner as a 14-year-old. Right. And so I'm going to make those concessions early on because I'm going to take my kids with me everywhere I possibly can. Those are the values to anchor into. And here's the thing I want you guys just to think through. Every family has different values. Okay. For me and my wife, I could care less what the social yada, yada, yada they're being taught in public school. And here's why. I do not believe in outsourcing my kids' spiritual development to somebody else. That's my job. That's my wife's job. And for me and my wife, we want our kids to be exposed to all kinds of stuff so when they have questions, they ask us. I don't want them being 18 or, for some of the students I worked with at private faith-based universities, 22 before they enter into a world where they're like, oh my gosh, and they have no psychology for it. And so what they do is they go to Google or they ask their friends or they ask Reddit. And so for me in my house, the reason we've moved schools is all academics. I want my kids to be pushed really, really hard. And I have found in some public school settings that it's like 2 worksheets and a Khan Academy video, and it's not, my kids aren't getting pushed. And so I moved them schools purely for academics. The social stuff, I feel like it's my job. And if the school's teaching them crazy things, those kids, awesome. I want them to come ask me about that. And then we can have that dialogue at my house. That's not for everybody. Other people are like, I don't even want those ideas in my kid's head. I'm fine with that. Whatever. That's for you guys to think through. But I want you guys to be specific about what will homeschooling bring us. What will, there's something to be said for what your wife said. It is easier. You already pay for it. It's free. There's some built-in communities for you, your wife, for the local kids. There's buses. There's all kind of stuff for public schools. Great, man. And public schools have shifted and changed dramatically over the last 15 years. I had one guy told me, and I loved the way he said it. He said, wanting public schools to be like, I went to a giant public high school, and it was essentially a college prep school. I'll put it up against any school in the country in terms of how hard it was academically, how much they pushed us, how hard the coaches pushed us in athletics. And that school doesn't exist anymore in public schools. It just doesn't. There's just been too much drama and too much watering down of everything. And so one guy said, wanting public schools to be like they were 25 and 30 years ago is like wanting gas to be $1 again. It's just not. Right? And so it's just shifted and changed. But ask about the values you and your wife hold. And dude, I think, this is just me, I think a local preschool, trying it out, a half-day preschool kind of thing, is a good way to feel how y'all feel, how your kids are feeling. Are they seen at school? Do you have teachers who are plugged in? There's amazing teachers everywhere, and there's some duds out there, just like every job, right? Asking yourself, how does this work for our family? I'll tell you, just you personally, if you're trying to work a full-time job and be a full-time present parent, that's got a very short shelf life to it. Either you'll crash and burn, you will not be where you are you won't be honoring your workplace by also trying to cram in a full-time parent / teacher role too, right?
Right. Well, I work for myself, and that's where it's like I work during his naps. So right now
I want you to spend more time on your business than 3 hours a day.
Yeah, right. And that's the problem, is I would have a lot more time for taking on more clients, and that would change everything at the same time. So
that's right. So it's all a trade-off, and it all comes back to you and your wife saying values. Values.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of at least one of the breadwinners in the house, I hate that word, but one of the main earners in the house, just going bananas in their 20s and early 30s.
Yeah.
because the research tells me that that's expertise and that hard work and those connections and that networking and those skills you learn, how hard you push yourself professionally, getting trained, getting opportunities, saying yes to a lot of stuff. That's what guides your 30s and 40s and 50s.
Okay. Yeah.
And so there's something to be said for, I'm going to grind and grind and grind and grind and grind. And I'm still going to get up early and have breakfast. And I'm still going to stay up and do silly things with my kids. And I'm just going to be tired in my 20s. That's just kind of part of it. There's no such thing as balance, right? There's no such thing as balance. And by the way, AI is going to screw it all up. All these things we're talking about, who knows in 5 years what that's going to look like. So I love that you're thinking down the road. Amazing. Don't over stress about stuff 10 years from now, because God help us, who knows, dude? We might have a colony on Mars by then. Who knows? And we might all be driving 79 Fords, because that's the last time they made a truck with a computer in it. And maybe that's all we got left, right? Who knows, dude? But I do want you and your wife to spend time thinking about the values. As for our house, what do we want it to feel like in the evenings? What kind of relationship do we want to have with our kids? And what's that going to cost us? You don't want your wife to work in 5 or 10 years? That's a math problem. How much money do you have to make for that to be true? What kind of house are you going to live in so that you can afford that kind of shift? What kind of cars are you going to not buy so that y'all can afford to do these things that you value? Values is a much harder conversation than just sitting around complaining about schools. Values force you to say, okay, who are we going to be? And I love that question for every couple. And I love every couple to do that every year too. Because values, get stress tested and pushed and beliefs change. I love that. But dude, you're on the right path. And I'll just say this, man, your little 2-year-old boy, he won the lottery getting you as his dad. That's awesome, man. Awesome that you're so invested thinking 5-10 years down the road. Amazing. And yes, it's okay that you loved your kid, but you didn't really like him until he turned 6 months. That's fine. You're good to go, man. You're just in the right place.